Hey, Bridge family, welcome to our Bridge Parents podcast.
Not the 2-minute drill?
Not the 2-minute drill. That's what we've been doing, but this is something different.
Which I don't know that we've really ever been doing the 2-minute drill either. It's been like 4 minutes and 5-minute drills.
We are like the most Pentecostal preachers ever. We talk too much. But anyways, so basically we are back here. We're going to be having these podcast videos every 2 weeks, and there will be experts and not that we're not experts,
not
but
me.
There will be different people that will be on here with us. And really our goal is just to give you something to listen to when you're driving to
picking up the kids from school,
picking up your kids, doing the
waiting at Starbucks lines,
whatever it is,
Dutch Brothers, wherever.
And so we'll be doing that. And I want to say a huge thank you to Brandon Knight and Jacob Johnson, because they've done a great job. If anyone knows where this area that we're filming is in our church, we should give them a gift card, because they have transformed this area right here.
Would be
for the better. But anyways, so basically our goal on this is just to come alongside you as parents and just help you, kind of give you some nuggets of information that we have probably learned the hard way. We were just talking about this a minute ago, how we are literally in the middle of this still. As parents, and so we just want to be able to come alongside you and help you in some different areas. Last Sunday I spoke, and I used several different resources in my message. There was a couple of books that, if you saw the 2-minute drill, there were a few books that I shared. Parenting by Stanley is a book that I love. Love and Logic is a book that we really enjoy.
Sure.
The Anxious Generation, which is a very scientific book. It's not a Christian book per se.
No.
Just a very scientific book on cell phones. But there is a guy named Tim Elmore who I have loved for a long time. He does a great job with building leaders and really kind of helping understand the next generation. I got to hear him at one of our district councils that we had one year for the Oklahoma Assemblies of God. But there was an article that came out that really influenced a lot of the message on Sunday, and I wanted to take some time to walk through this. Whenever we post this, we'll put it in the comments.
Just one thing. I mean, Tim Elmore has he has a blog, he has a website that you can go to. I think there's an email list that you can even subscribe to. So just as a resource to you all as parents.
Yeah, growing leaders. Yeah. And he has the Habitude. You used to use the Habitudes, right?
Oh, man, because, I mean, long time ago when I was in the youth ministry doing things, we would use, he had a book called The Habitude, and it was a curriculum. In fact, if you can find old copies of those, they're fantastic. Maybe great devotions for you and your kids.
So I guess I say this just to say, it's not like we're just looking online for somebody who wrote something. I really do. Tim Elmore is somebody who is, there's another book that's out. He's talking about how now, like in our church, in our businesses, there's multiple generations all trying to work together. And so I'm excited about reading this. But today what we wanted to look through was just this article that he wrote on 3 mistakes that we make. And I tweaked it a little bit.
For the record, I've made a lot more mistakes.
Well, exactly. But in this article, the first time I read this several years ago, I just thought this was probably one of the best things, and it convicted me a lot as parents. And Doug, don't you think as parents, the first thing for us to realize is to give ourselves a little slack and to realize that we're not going to do it perfect?
Yeah, and that's hard though, because I think our own personal pride is built off of this idea of, well, how well are my kids doing in life, and we don't give ourselves the grace and mercy that God has even provided to us, and so there's.
And we're probably not going to, if our motive truly is to love God and love our family, we're probably not going to screw up our kids with that one mistake that we make or whatever. So, but that doesn't mean that we can't learn and grow and get better. And hopefully this will help all of us. I was saying before this, one of the best things that I think has helped me as a parent is to have my coworkers, other pastors who I can bounce ideas off of, or, hey, how did you do this? But also our small group. There's been times with both of our kids, I'm like, well, what in the world? And I think, again, we talk about this a lot. I think Satan wants us to think we're the only ones, or our kids are the only ones that are going through something. And there's been times
which is totally untrue, because what's funny to me is I was thinking, I could be the best parent if my kids would have just stayed 3 years old the entire time. Because at this point, I've got like 15, 20 years worth of experience that I could have dominated the 3-year-old. The problem is they didn't stay at 3. They became 5, they became 10. Now they're 18, 19, 20 and on up. And each year there's something brand new, and I'm having to learn. But I'm thankful that there are people in community that I can work with and that I can ask questions to and say who have done it before.
Yeah, we just had a series in our small group where we literally had people our parents' age come in and just kind of share their testimony.
Yeah.
Because it's very powerful to know other people have gone through the stuff that we're going through. And so anyways, that's kind of a shameless plug to make sure you're getting involved in small groups and things, because there's a lot of just conversation and things that we can go through. But in this article, and like we said, we'll share it by Tim Elmore, he kind of starts defining the problem, and really I would say this, there is, Pastor Rob said this before, but in parenting there is this tension, a constant tension between, am I preparing my kids or am I protecting my kids?
Right.
And I would say the whole basis of this article is there's times that we need to be protecting our kids, and there's times that we need to spend protecting our kids. I would say the way that I would summarize this article, just to kind of intro into it, is Tim Elmore is suggesting that we spend maybe way too much time protecting our kids than preparing our kids. Do you think that would be kind of a good overview of this?
Right. And I think part of the reason why we choose to protect our kids versus preparing them is because, honestly, I think sometimes it's easier. Mm-hmm. It's more black and white on the protection side of things. And so it's harder to allow your kid to potentially have to make a decision for themselves that actually has consequences.
Yeah.
And so for us, we're just like, well, I'm just going to do this easy. And plus, we live in a very, very instantaneous society. So, like, if I can solve the problem right now, I should just do that right now and not have to worry about any kind of longevity.
And he really pointed to about 30 years ago when this really started. There was a Tylenol scare, that there was something that was going to hurt kids, or we started putting missing kids' faces on milk cartons. I mean, that's not a bad thing to try to help people find kids. Now we have it, the alert on our phones and different things. But and then we add social media. Sure. The moment something happens anywhere in the world, we find out about it.
Yeah.
And so his suggestion, my opinion, and kind of from what you read, is I don't know that the world is that much scarier than what it used to be.
I just think we're a whole lot more aware of it.
Do you agree with that? Do you think?
I feel like, in fact, I'll slaughter this because I was trying to tell you this earlier and I still messed it up. But literally, anxiety today has been created because there's a gap between where we are and where we think we need to be. Mm. And the reason that we think we need to be places is because we have so much more information right there at our hands and at our fingertips through our cell phones, obviously through the news media, whatever else. And our kids have that same access. And so in their mind, they're looking at where their life is currently versus where they think that they should be. And it's creating an immense amount of anxiety because they feel like they should be somewhere that they're not. And so in regards to that question that you asked, I mean, we are inundated with so much more information, and I don't think that we were ever designed that way. I don't think God designed us to carry the weight of the world,
and we not know everything. So we'll kind of jump into this. The first mistake that he says that we makes is that we risk too little. And basically, he says we live in a world that warns us of danger at every turn, toxic, high voltage, flammable, slippery when wet, steep curve ahead, don't walk, hazard. And so it's just a safety first mentality that he says emerged about over 30 years ago. Doug, what are some when we talk about risk, we're not going to, obviously we're not going to tell our kids, hey, go jump off the roof into the pool and see what happens. But what are some simple risks that you think that we could do that would keep us from overprotecting our kids? Anything?
Yeah, well, so I think that we always have to remember that pain is a necessary teacher for all of us. Mm-hmm. And I think that he mentions that in the article even, that there are places where you have to allow there to be a little bit of pain. And so some of these places are like skin knees and going outside and playing. Those areas, places where there's just a true consequence that we're not talking about running out in the middle of the street and dodging highway cars, because that's potentially damaging to their life and to their body. But we're talking about things that there is learning opportunities built inside of it.
Yeah, so he talks about, when we were growing up, we were playing outside. The sports drink of the 80s and 90s was the good old green water hose water. Yeah. And you're playing outside and those kind of things. And so I just think being okay with that, I think at an early age here at church, we have good nursery workers, putting your kids in the nursery, having your kids go back to the kids area. When I was middle school pastor, there would be times I would try to tell parents, and even now that my son's in middle school, going to camp, I want them to experience God and be filled with the Holy Spirit and all those things. that's great. But really what I've realized is the biggest win right in middle school is like going and taking a shower, brushing your teeth, maybe not losing all your underwear, having to keep up with your money, just all those things that we're like, I wonder if they're okay. I wonder if they're okay. And it's like, you know what? I did all that stuff as a kid. Yeah. It's going to be good growing for them. You know?
Yeah, it's funny because there's a bunch of like Gen Xer memes that are kind of coming out in reels, and it always talks about how Gen X, which I guess I would be part of. Like literally, I think that in summer days, we were kicked out of the house, and we were out of the house for the entire day, and we're not allowed to come back until we came back in for dinner. And sometimes we washed our hands, sometimes we didn't. You know, and it's that kind of thing. And so I think there's these places where, because we are so aware of all of the potential scary things in this world, we've kind of ripped away this opportunity for our kids to go out and play and discover. Which is beneficial for their life. Yeah. This is that risky part. And I'm not a risky person. By nature, I'm a very, very cautious person, but I do see value in allowing my kids to explore and to play and to build forts and make bombs out of acorns. And
exactly. And that's all, that helps with their creativity. It helps with all of those things. Yesterday, it was funny, our kids are home obviously this week because of the ice and everything. And so my son, Cooper, he's 13. And he's like, Dad, I want to make a fire in the backyard or whatever. He's about to go crazy in the house. And so he was walking back, there's some woods. He was walking back and forth and picking up firewood and making fires. And it was kind of like, well, as he's doing that, Lacey Swope is on the news saying, if you're outside for 5 minutes, you could get frostbite or whatever. And there's this point of us where we're scared to death.
Can't go out there.
And we're like, no, you're probably going to be okay.
Yeah, so I trust that he'd probably figure out pretty quickly that it's cold outside. Yeah. And he's going to come back. I mean, like we have nerves, we have feelings. Yeah. You talk about fire. Gavin one time, this is right the first day that COVID happened and they canceled school. So it was right after Rudy Gobert touched the microphone in Oklahoma City and everybody started panicking, all things COVID. Gavin went outside. They has no school, doesn't know what to do. We think the world's coming to an end. He's outside with a magnifying glass, and he's burning bugs with that magnifying glass, which is awesome. It's totally that's a boy thing. Yeah. But he decided to chase the bug into the grass, and he started the half of our yard on fire. And so I remember, like, he comes in, panic. He's like, Dad, fire. And he's like, he's panicking like this. He goes, what's going on? And so I run outside, and sure enough, there was a fire on the half of the lawn. And I tell you this because in that moment, like, I would have never thought that a magnifying glass, we know it can cause burns and whatever else. But he learned a very valuable lesson there. I'm not saying to let your kid play with fire necessarily, but I wouldn't hesitate in giving my kid a magnifying glass again. Why? Yeah. Because he walked through that risk and he learned a valuable lesson and something that he was able to learn through.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's funny. In this, he talks about how there's a lot of parents or a lot of kids, because the parents are risking too little, their kids get what he calls high arrogance, low self-esteem. They're cocky, but deep down they don't have any confidence.
They're hollow.
Yeah, they've never been allowed to actually do something.
Yeah, he kind of talked about they've gotten all their knowledge from a YouTube video. Yeah. Which is not life and it's not experience. Yeah.
Or like Cooper will get all excited. He's playing Madden and he's scoring a bunch. It's like, you're on the rookie level. You're on the easiest level. Like that's not the same as actually doing something in real life. Something else I think that's important, as youth pastors we saw this, but kids are going to get in little fights and little squabbles with other kids. Yeah. And so allowing them to work through that, learning to say, I'm sorry, hey, I didn't mean that. Again, a lot of there's a lot of that comes about more because of text messaging. It's easier to, but I think too, making sure that we're not too quick to jump in the middle of our kids, and that kind of really leads to the next thing. Is there anything else about risk taking?
The only other thing I would say real quickly is this: as your kids get older, the risks become. I mean, I used to say things like this all the time. Adult decisions have adult consequences, and so when your kids get older, things start getting a little bit more scary when they start expressing their political beliefs, they start expressing things that they're hearing at school, anything sexual, all of that stuff like that. That's terrifying. I think one of the things that we panic about is we just shut those conversations down. A, because they're awkward, but B, because we're terrified. What is my kid into? Are they doing drugs? Are they doing this? And we're panicking. Yeah. I think a place that we really need to hone in there is start engaging in a better conversation with our kids when they start asking some of those scary questions, or they start bringing up some of those topics, and some of that is just are we asking them good questions? Are we asking them if they've considered all the angles, or are we showing our cards right away and being like, no, you can't do that, and shutting it down, because then that's gonna extinguish the conversation, and that conversation is necessary for building that teamwork with your child.
Yesterday we were going on a camping trip this weekend, and we'll move on after this, but Cooper spent like $20 on matches and lighting things, and it was like, so then we get in the car and he's like, man, that stinks. That cost me like $20. But I would rather him learn that
$20
now.
worth of matches?
Yeah. It's like matches and lighting. Like,
awesome.
He's gonna probably burn everything down like
Good
Gavin
luck to your grass.
But my point is he's learning how to.
Yeah.
He earned that money. I didn't earn that money, so I'm not going to tell him no, because now he's like, man, I probably shouldn't have spent that much money on matches and
I
stuff.
bet he never buys that.
But
many
that's the
matches.
only way that he'll learn. So the next thing he says is we rescue too quickly.
Yeah.
And so it's probably kind of self-explanatory, but sometimes we just tend to jump in the middle of our kids and instead of letting them learn through that pain. We talked about suffering, perseverance, character, hope. We just jump in.
Yeah, he says that we jump in and we're parenting for the short term.
Yeah,
and so by rescuing too quickly, we're doing what's convenient for us.
Yeah,
because it takes work to prepare them for the long term.
There's a story that you told me one time about Gavin when he was younger and his basketball coach.
Yeah.
Because I think that to me is a perfect example of what we're talking about.
Yeah. So when we're talking like little bitty kid basketball, so this isn't like where you've got a star player or multiple star players and they're getting all the play time. Yeah. This is like when they're 5-6 years old and you're just let the boys play ball. And Gavin, he sat through an entire game and didn't get to go out and play at all. And he came to me, he was really, really upset about it. And I said, well, Gavin, what are you going to do about that? Because as a dad, yes, I've paid money for this. And, I've paid for the jersey, I paid for the league, paid for all these things. So there's a part of me that wanted to go and fight that battle for him and to go out there and rescue that situation and tell the coach, hey, you didn't put my son in. But this was an opportunity for me to kind of have a conversation with Gavin and say, hey, Gavin, what do you think you should do? And he goes, well, I probably should go talk to the coach. I said, I think that's a great idea. Why don't you go talk to the coach, let him know that you want to play and that you didn't get a chance to play. And he goes, I don't want to do that. And I said, no, I think that this is really a good thing for you. And it was a tough thing, but I remember I'm sat from the bleachers. It was probably better than the game, honestly. I watched from the bleachers as he went up to his coach, and I could hear him. He says, Coach, I didn't get to play today, and I would really like to play. What can I do to do that? And the coach goes, it was a mistake. The coach goes, I didn't even know. And he goes, but I'll make sure you play. Guess who got to play the next game?
But that experience was probably, if he would have dunked the ball, it wouldn't have been worth what that experience
for sure.
was.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think we understand rescuing too quickly. I do. In Galatians it talks about, just real quick, because the question does come into play, when do we step in with our kids? And in Galatians, it's interesting, it talks about carrying each other's burdens. But then it also says this is Galatians chapter 6, verse 5, it also says that we should carry, that everyone should carry their own load. And so really I think it's interesting, we're going to have a burden. We need to carry each other's burdens. If something is becoming too big of a burden on our kids, the Bible says we need to step in. But what happens is if we jump in and start carrying the load, or that this, like in that Greek word, it means just their daily responsibilities.
Sure.
Then that's when we can have issues. But what are some real practical things that we can do?
No, I was just going to say, I think that personal responsibility is this thing that we're wanting to teach our kids, and this is about, by rescuing them, we're eliminating that chance for personal responsibility. So simple things. You had mentioned one time about setting up 2 outfits for your child, and they get to choose one of those 2 outfits. Yeah. So you're still, as parent, you're still in control, but you're allowing them to make a decision. Ordering from the menu or ordering at a restaurant, yes, it's awkward to watch your kids fumble around asking for which sauce to get from Chick-fil-A, but it's worth it. It's worth that struggle.
I remember,
those are easy things.
I think the first time I kind of learned this lesson was like when Cooper was in pre-K, and I told this story before, but your report card is like real simple things, but he couldn't zip up his jacket. And we realized he never wanted to wear his jacket. He always wanted to wear hoodies. We thought he just liked hoodies, but then we realized it's because he couldn't zip up a jacket. And so we started practicing zipping, and it was funny. You could see in this little 5-year-old kid this confidence.
Jackets should come with Velcro.
Absolutely, they should. So I think, like you said, laying out different options, ordering their own food.
Sure.
So this is kind of some love and logic stuff. Whenever they forget their homework, not rescuing them or running it up there, or their lunch, or those kind of things, encouraging them to handle out as they get older. Andy Stanley, in the book Parenting that I mentioned the other day, his son got a ticket, and he's just said, hey, if you turn it over on the back, that's the number you call, and I'm sure you'll figure it out.
Yep.
So the last thing, Doug, is it talks about here, and we're going to end up here just the next couple minutes, but it says we rave too easily. And this is something that I think is hard for a lot of parents, because we want our kids to know how much we love you.
We
we're
want to
proud of you.
validate them
Yeah.
in all of the things that they do. And so we're really quick to sometimes say, hey, you're awesome, you're smart,
Yeah.
you're gifted, you're super. And that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that the perspective that he was taking in this is that it's a little bit misleading, and we should be commenting on something else.
Yeah, I remember when the first time I read this, I like sports. I think sports are a great way. You mentioned earlier Gavin and basketball, but when Cooper was like 5, he was playing t-ball, and it's not hard to hit a home run in t-ball because you hit it, and then there's 4 errors. It's not really a home run. But there was a time I was like, man, you hit 4 home runs today or whatever. And then as he gets older, it's like, man, I guess I'm not good anymore. I don't hit home runs. Well, it's like, no, it's more difficult. But what I realize is you need to praise.
We rave too easily on the things that are not.
Yeah, he can't control that. He can't control that they had 4 errors or whatever. But you can control attitude and effort. So I wish earlier on, and I'm trying to get better at with both of my kids, is not praising the external things, but praising their character.
Yeah.
You worked hard. You had great attitude. Those types of things.
I love the idea that when their character matches their beliefs. So we believe in God. So when their character matches their belief system, those are the places that we should be really, really building up our kids. Hey, love how honest that you chose to be when you were wrong and you knew you were wrong, but you're still honest. Love the way that you forgave your sister for punching you in the face or whatever that's going on. Love the way that you showed kindness, or the way that you were patient. Like those types of things that they can control.
Well, and maybe they take a class that's harder. Maybe they're taking a chemistry or something they don't have to. But hey, I'm proud of you for taking that class and you worked hard. That B in that class means more than an A plus. So, well, cool. Well, we're going to share this in the comments if you want to go through and read this article on your own. But these are 3 mistakes that Tim Elmore says is easy for parents to make. And Doug, just my last question to you: you've been in ministry for a long time, youth pastoring. I would say that I feel like I've seen this quite a bit.
Totally.
So I feel like this is something that could help make all of us better, something to think about. Might even be a conversation between you and your spouse, and then just try to figure out some ways you can implement this. So we love you guys. We hope this helps, and we hope you have a great day.